My name is Michael R. Dutton, and my rank is Lieutenant Commander, U.S. Navy, retired. We left Newport, Rhode Island, and we steamed down to the Recife, Brazil, where we refueled. We did not have any liberty. We weren't allowed off the ship. That was a grueling experience. The fuel that we were using on the ship at the time was black oil. It flowed very slowly on its own, and it was gravity feed from a tank up on a hill. So we were there forever refueling. We then crossed the Atlantic, and that is when I made the transition from being a polywog to being a shellback. Yeah, there we go. A polywog to a shellback, because we crossed the equator. And that was a uniquely interesting experience. Things that we did on that ship to make that transition were things that the Navy no longer allows. It wasn't really super dangerous, but for instance, we had to crawl on our bellies through the garbage chute. And so they were saving up garbage from the mess decks and storing it on deck, and it was getting hot and smelly. And so, but we immediately came out of that, and we were hosed down immediately. But it was still not a good experience. Some of us had issues with our stomachs, and we got a little sick. And then those behind us had to kind of crawl through that, so that wasn't a good deal either. But we made it. And then, of course, once you got through the garbage chute, you also had to before you went through the garbage chute, you had to kiss the belly of King Neptune. And King Neptune was the largest, fattest man on the ship, and he sat there with his belly sticking out, and it was covered with grease. So you got a face full of grease before you went through the garbage chute, but after you came through the garbage chute, you were then a shellback. In the meantime, to encourage us to get around the ship to the point where we had to kiss King Neptune's belly, we had shellbacks who were making us crawl on the deck on our hands and knees, smacking us in the butts every once in a while with a thing called a shillelagh, which was a little length of fire hose. Some of them smacked relatively hard and it stung. Some of them were relatively easy on us, but walking on our hands and knees on the deck of a ship that has non-skid on the deck, which means when it's granulated pieces of some kind of rock-like material that's mixed in with the paint on the walking areas of the exterior of the ship, it cuts into you a little bit. So it was kind of a bad experience. It was an interesting experience. But the thing about it was, the next time we crossed the equator, I was a shellback, and I was the one that got to give any polywogs that were on the ship. And that was a problem there too, because we didn't get a lot of new polywogs on the ship, because we were still crossing the Atlantic on our way to the Mediterranean, and we hadn't gotten to a point where we could take on new crew members if there were any. So we had to wait until we came back before I could be a shellback and wreak havoc on the new polywogs. But the Navy has changed those procedures significantly, and we no longer have to go through that kind of a grueling type of experience. And trust me, I'm not exaggerating. Oh, on the World Cruise, we went across the Atlantic. We had a brief stop in Angola, West Africa. Then we went down around the Cape of Good Hope. we refueled in South Africa, but we were not allowed to go off the ship at that refueling point either because of apartheid. So for political reasons, we couldn't go ashore in South Africa. Then we went back into the Indian Ocean. We steamed around in the Indian Ocean for a while. We were doing exercises with various NATO ships that were on station there, and we did do some ports of call, but I can't remember all of them. One was we stopped in India at some point in time. We stopped in East Pakistan at some point in time. We stopped Bandar Abbas, Saudi Arabia. During that cruise, the ship that was supposed to relieve us in the Pacific on our way out and on our way home was not able to do that because a ship on the gun line had gotten damaged. So the ship that was supposed to relieve us was ordered to the gun line at South Vietnam, and we were ordered to remain on station in the Indian Ocean until they could get another ship to relieve us. So our cruise was extended, and we, instead of being at sea for about 7 months, we were at sea for almost 9 months. So it was close. It was getting closer to a year before we actually got back to home port. But in that process, we did not get to go to Australia. We did go to Singapore, Hong Kong, and Yokosuka, Japan. And then we refueled at Midway Island in the Pacific. That was interesting because the water was just perfectly clear, and you could see down 30 feet. You could see the sand at the bottom, at least 30 or 40 feet down, because the ship drew about, I don't know, 25 feet. So we had to have a little bit of water under the hull to clear the screws and the rudders. So kind of interesting notes there as I'm moving along. But coming home, we stopped at San Diego, and we had a little bit of liberty there. And then we went south and went through the Panama Canal. We stopped in Panama City. I didn't leave the ship. Some of the sailors did get to leave the ship, but my duty section was the one that had to stay aboard, and we weren't there long enough to rotate through duty sections to get everybody ashore at Panama City. I was petty officer of the watch for the after engine room, so I was in charge of the after engine room operations while the ship was going through the Panama Canal. So I didn't get up to see anything that was going on. And then back up the Atlantic, we stopped in Jacksonville, Florida. That was, again, a short stop. I got to go ashore at Jacksonville, and that was, again, a limited overnight period. We didn't get to stay overnight. We got off the ship and had to come back on board. And then from there, we went back to Mayport, Florida, and that ended our world cruise. It was a relief. I got leave. I got to go home, but our primary station while we were in that area was along the equator in the Indian Ocean, and then somewhat up into the Arabian Sea, and it's hot over there. So down in the engine room, it was quite hot, and so you get acclimated to that. So now I'm back on the east coast of the United States, and I'm on leave at home, and it's 72 degrees. So I'm wearing a jacket. I'm freezing because I can't stand the cold of being at 72 degrees when I'm used to 120 to 125 degrees Fahrenheit at conditions from the Indian Ocean and the areas around the equator and down in the engineering plant. So it took a while for my body to reacclimate to normal temperatures, or normal temperatures for the east coast of the United States.